I still remember the exact date, September 9th, 2001. It was my first day moving into college, and the entire campus was alive with noise. Students were dragging boxes down the hallways, parents were giving last-minute hugs, and there was this nervous excitement buzzing in the air. My room assignment was in one of the oldest dormitories on campus, a building with creaking floors and a smell of damp that seemed to cling to the walls. When I unlocked the door to my assigned room, I was surprised. There was only one bed set up with belongings, mine. The other bed was bare. No sheets, no bags, not even a pillow. My parents brushed it off, saying my roommate probably hadn't arrived yet. Still, the quiet in that room felt different compared to chaos just outside the door. I tried to ignore it, telling myself I was lucky to have the space to myself, at least for a while. The first night in the dorm should have been exciting, but I couldn't shake the unease. As I lay in bed, scrolling through my phone, I kept hearing faint creaks across the room, like someone stepping onto the wooden floorboards. Once or twice, I thought I heard the sound of the other mattress shifting under weight, but when I looked, it was as bare as before. Around midnight, the noises grew stronger. I could have sworn I heard whispering, not from the hallway, not muffled through the door, but from inside my room. It was soft, almost like a conversation spoken just below my hearing. My stomach twisted as I turned toward the empty bed, half expecting to see someone lying there. Of course, there was no one. That night, I kept the lamp on until morning. Days went by, but my roommate never showed up. Every time I asked the resident advisor, she insisted the room was assigned to 2 people. Yet no one ever saw my roommate. No one knew who he was, and his name wasn't even listed on the floor roster. It was as if he existed only on paper. But that wasn't the only thing. At night, the disturbances grew worse. My desk chair would be turned slightly when I woke up, my drawers open on their own, leaving clothes hanging out. And the worst part? The other bed never looked empty anymore. Each morning I'd wake to see a faint indentation in the mattress, shaped exactly like the outline of a person who had been lying there. One evening, I mentioned my room number to an older student while grabbing food at the dining hall. The smile drained from her face instantly. She pulled me aside and whispered, "That's the room near the fire escape, isn't it?" When I nodded, she leaned closer. "You need to be careful. Every September 9th, someone from that room disappears." She told me it had happened 3 times in the past few years. Each time, the missing person's roommate never showed up. Each time, the case was quietly pushed aside. The school never addressed it publicly. At first, I wanted to laugh it off, but deep inside, I knew she wasn't joking. That night, the whispers in my room were louder than ever. So loud I had to bury my head under the pillow just to drown them out. It was past midnight when I woke up to the sound of breathing. Not mine, someone else's. Heavy, ragged, coming from the empty bed. Slowly, I turned my head. For the first time, I saw something there. A figure. Gray, faint, but solid enough that I knew I wasn't imagining it. It was sitting upright on the mattress, staring straight ahead. Then, slowly, it turned its head toward me. The outline of a face came into view. Hollow eyes, an open mouth that moved silently, as though trying to form words. My body went numb. I couldn't scream, couldn't move, couldn't breathe. And then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, it dissolved into nothing. But the dent in the mattress remained. The morning of September 9th arrived, and I couldn't take it anymore. I shoved my belongings into bags, shaking so hard I could barely zip them up. Just as I was about to leave, something caught my eye on the wall above the second bed. Scratched faintly into the paint were two words, "Still here." That was all it took. I ran from that room and never went back. By the end of the semester, the school quietly sealed off that section of the dorm, citing maintenance. But I know the truth. Every year, when September 9th approaches, I feel that same weight in my chest, as though someone or something is still waiting for me to return. Would you have stayed quiet like I did, or told the school exactly what happened in that room? Let me know in the comments. It was late on September 9th, 2007, when I found myself driving down a stretch of highway that cut through miles of farmland. I had just finished visiting a friend in the city and was heading back to my small hometown, 2 hours away. The roads were empty, too empty. The kind of silence where even the hum of your engine feels out of place. I kept glancing at the dashboard clock. 11:42 p.m. I told myself I'd be home by midnight. But with each mile, the road felt longer than it should have been. Street lights were sparse, and when my headlights caught the endless rows of cornfields, I had the uneasy feeling that something or someone was watching from between the stalks. About 20 minutes into the drive, I saw him. A man walking along the shoulder of the road, head bowed, his thumb out. His clothes looked old-fashioned, like something from decades ago. At first, I thought about stopping, but something about the way he didn't look up made my stomach twist. I slowed down, but when my headlights passed over him, I realized I couldn't see his face. Just a blur, like it wasn't fully there. I pressed harder on the gas and sped past. But when I glanced in my rear-view mirror, my chest tightened. The road behind me was empty. No sign of him at all. A few miles later, the radio in my car flickered on by itself. Static at first, then faint voices. I fiddled with the knob, but no matter which station I turned to, the voices stayed the same. At first, it sounded like overlapping whispers, but soon I realized they were saying my name. Over and over, distorted and crackling to the speakers. "Come back! Come back! Come back!" I slammed the radio off, but the whispers didn't stop. For a moment, I thought they were coming from outside the car, like someone was sitting in the back seat, murmuring directly into my ear. I nearly swerved off the road as I checked the rear-view mirror. No one was there. I spotted a gas station up ahead and pulled in, desperate to get out of the car and shake the fear crawling up my spine. The place was deserted, no cars, no attendant, just a row of flickering fluorescent lights above the pumps. I walked inside the convenience store, but the shelves were mostly bare and the hum of the cooler in the back was the only sound. As I stood at the counter, trying to call someone, my phone froze on the lock screen. It was stuck at the exact time, 12:09 a.m., and when I looked up, I saw movement at the edge of the parking lot, a figure standing by my car, the same man from the side of the road. I bolted back to my car, fumbled with the keys, but when I yanked open the driver's side door, my body went rigid. The man wasn't outside anymore. He was sitting in the passenger seat, staring straight ahead. His skin was gray, stretched tight, and his face was still blurred, like I wasn't supposed to see it clearly. My instinct was to run, but before I could, he slowly turned his head toward me. Then, the windshield fogged up from the inside, even though the air conditioner was blasting. Across the glass, in the condensation, words began to form, long streaks like invisible fingers had traced them. September 9th. I don't remember starting the engine, but suddenly I was back on the highway, tires screeching as I sped faster than I ever had in my life. I kept my eyes locked forward, afraid of what I might see if I looked beside me. When I finally pulled into my driveway, I exhaled, shaking with relief. But when I turned the passenger seat, it was empty. No man, no fog, just silence. For weeks afterward, I convinced myself it was exhaustion, maybe even a hallucination. But then I read about it. Reports of drivers disappearing every September 9th on that same stretch of highway. Their cars were found abandoned, doors open, headlights still on. They were never seen again. If this happened to you, would you ever drive that highway again? Let me know in the comments. It was September 9th, 2016, when a group of us decided to take a weekend trip into the woods. I had just turned 22, and college life had been grinding me down. When my best friend suggested we rent a small cabin upstate, it sounded perfect, cheap, isolated, and just far enough from the city to clear our heads. We packed bags, threw a cooler in the trunk, and made the 3-hour drive late that Friday afternoon. The forest roads felt endless. Tall pines loomed over the dirt path, blotting out the sun, and my phone's signal had long since disappeared. By the time we pulled up to the cabin, the sky was already darkening. The place was small, one story, with peeling paint on the wood, and a porch that sagged under our weight. It looked older than it had in the rental photos, but we laughed it off. We were young and wanted adventure. Inside, it smelled faintly of mildew. The floorboards groaned with every step, and the furniture looked like it hadn't been touched in years. Still, we dropped our bags and tried to make the best of it. That night, sitting around a small fireplace, I remember thinking, maybe this wasn't such a bad idea after all. But then I noticed the strange carvings etched into the wooden beams above the mantel. Symbols I didn't recognize, sharp and jagged, like someone had scratched them in anger. I asked if anyone else noticed, but my friends just shrugged, saying old cabins often had weird graffiti. I told myself the same. Still, the longer I stared, the less they looked like graffiti and the more they looked like warnings. We stayed up late, telling stories by the fire. By midnight, the flames had burned down low, and the shadows stretched long across the walls. That's when we first heard it, a faint tapping sound outside the cabin. At first, we thought it was branches knocking against the windows, but the rhythm was too deliberate. 3 taps, pause. 3 taps again. One of my friends, Tyler, grabbed a flashlight and went to check. He swung the beam outside, but found nothing. The trees stood still, the night was silent, and the ground was empty. We laughed nervously, trying to brush it off. But when Tyler shut the door, the tapping started again, this time from the opposite side of the cabin. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. It was as if someone or something was circling us. We locked the doors, pulled the curtains tight, and turned up the music on someone's phone, trying to drown out. But the tapping didn't stop until nearly dawn. When the sun rose, I walked outside to prove it had just been our imagination. That's when I saw them. Barefoot footprints in the dirt, circling the cabin in a wide ring. The prints weren't fresh. The edges were softened, as though they'd been pressed into the soil long ago. Yet they hadn't been there the day before. The second day, rain kept us trapped inside. With nothing better to do, I started snooping around. That's when I found the journal. It was wedged in the back of the cabinet. Covered in dust, the leather cracked with age. I sat on the couch, brushing it off, and began to read. The entries dated back to the 1980s. The handwriting grew shakier as the pages went on, but the words chilled me. The writer described hearing voices outside the cabin at night, footsteps circling, tapping on the windows. They wrote about seeing faces in the glass when no one was there, One entry ended abruptly with a line, September 9th. If they return tonight, I don't think I'll make it. I felt my blood run cold. The date matched ours exactly, just decades apart. I showed the journal to my friends, but most of them laughed, saying it was probably some prank left behind by past renters. Only Tyler looked as shaken as I felt. "It's too specific," he whispered. "Why would someone make that up?" The rest of the day, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were repeating someone else's story, step by step, and I kept glancing at the window, half expecting a face to be staring back at me. That night, the power went out. The cabin was swallowed by darkness, save for the glow of our flashlights. The storm outside raged, rain hammering the roof, thunder shaking the walls. We all gathered in the living room, too uneasy to split up. But then, as lightning flashed across the windows, I saw them. Figures tall, thin, and motionless, standing just beyond the tree line. For a split second, their outlines were clear, like shadows made solid. My heart nearly stopped. When the lightning faded, they were gone. But I knew I hadn't imagined it. Tyler admitted he saw them too. The others refused to admit anything, their laughter nervous, hollow. Hours passed, but none of us slept. Every creak of the cabin made me flinch. Every gust of wind sounded like footsteps on the porch. Around 3 a.m., the tapping returned. This time louder, closer. Then it wasn't just tapping. It was scratching, long, dragging sounds like fingernails against the wood. We huddled together, gripping whatever we could use as weapons, but the sounds never broke through the door. When dawn finally came, the scratching stopped. But carved into a wooden door were 3 words we hadn't heard in years of classes, jobs, and normal life. They read, still outside, waiting. By the 5th day, the fear had settled into us like a sickness. None of us could eat. None of us could sleep. Tyler and I tried convincing the others to leave, but the storm had washed out the dirt road. The car was stuck, its tires sunk deep in the mud. We had no choice but to wait it out. That evening, while everyone sat around the fireplace, I heard it, a voice. Faint at first, carried on the wind, but unmistakably human. It wasn't random words. It was my name, spoken slowly, deliberately. Daniel. I froze. My friends looked at me, confused. "Did you hear that?" I whispered. They shook their heads, but Tyler's face was pale. "I heard it too," he muttered. We tried to convince ourselves it was a wind, but the voice returned. This time louder, clearer, closer. It came from just outside the window. When the flashlight beam swung across the glass, there was nothing there, only our own pale reflection staring back. The voice didn't stop that night. It circled the cabin, calling us one by one, using our names as though it knew us intimately. Every time we heard it, the journal's last words burned in my mind. "If they return tonight, I don't think I'll make it." When midnight struck, the cabin fell silent. For a moment, I thought it was over. We huddled together, clutching flashlights, barely breathing. Then came the knock. 3 heavy knocks on the door. None of us moved. The knocks repeated, louder, shaking the old wood. And then, without warning, the door creaked open, even though we had locked it hours before. The storm outside had stopped. The air was unnaturally still. In the doorway stood a figure, taller than any of us, its head tilted unnaturally to one side. Its body was little more than shadow, but its face, or where its face should have been, was blurred, like it was hidden behind water. My friend screamed, scattering into the cabin. I couldn't move. I stood frozen as a figure stepped inside, each footfall echoing like thunder. The last thing I remember was the sound of my name, whispered directly into my ear. Daniel. The lights went out and everything went black. When I woke, it was morning. The cabin door stood wide open. The storm had cleared, but Tyler was gone. His bag, his phone, his jacket, all left behind. We searched for hours, but there was no trace of him. Later, when the police questioned us, we tried to explain. They dismissed it as a tragic accident, saying Tyler must have wandered off into the woods. But I know the truth. It was September 9th, 2016, and Tyler hadn't wandered off. He had been taken. To this day, I still hear that voice sometimes when I'm alone at night, whispering my name, waiting for the next September 9th. What would you have done? Stayed inside and prayed for morning, or risked the storm to escape the cabin? Comment below. It was September 9th, 1998, when my parents and I moved into the old house on Ashwood Street. I was 13 at the time, sulking in the back seat of our station wagon while my dad kept insisting this move would be a fresh start. The house was bigger than our old one, but something about it looked wrong. The windows seemed too dark, the shutters hung crooked, and the paint peeled in long strips that gave it the appearance of scowl. As soon as we stepped inside, the smell hit me, a mixture of damp wood and something sour, like spoiled milk. My mom wrinkled her nose but forced a smile, saying we'd fix it up. I followed them in silence, dragging my suitcase up the narrow staircase. My new bedroom was at the very end of the hall, the farthest from everyone else. That night, while unpacking, I noticed something carved into the inside of my closet door. Faint letters, jagged and uneven, scratched so deep into it they couldn't be sanded away. It read, "Don't stay past September 9th. The next day, my dad asked me to help carry boxes down to the basement. The air grew colder as we descended, and the single light bulb hanging from the ceiling flickered weakly. The concrete walls were stained with dark streaks, and the floor was littered with old tools and rusted nails. But what caught my eye was a wooden door set into the far wall. It was different from the rest of the basement, smaller, narrower, and chained shut with a heavy lock. "Stay away from that," my dad muttered when he saw me staring. I asked him why, but he just shrugged. "Probably just storage. Nothing for you to worry about." His casual tone didn't match the tension in his voice. That night, lying in bed, I thought I heard noises drifting up through floorboards. Not the creaks of old pipes or the hum of the furnace, but knocks. Slow, deliberate, coming from directly beneath my room. By the third day, I was desperate to get out of the house. I wandered down the block and met an elderly neighbor, Mrs. Holloway. She was sitting on her porch, knitting, and when I told her which house we had moved into, her hands froze mid-stitch. "You're in number 41?" she asked, her voice low. When I nodded, she looked away quickly. "That house has a history. Families don't stay there long. Not since the accidents." I pressed her for more, but she shook her head. "Ask your parents," she said, her eyes full of pity. When I told my mom later, she dismissed it as gossip. "Old people love to scare kids," she said. But that night, I dreamed of the basement door. In the dream, the chains were gone, and something inside was breathing loud, ragged breaths that shook the walls. On September 8th, one day before the date scratched into my closet, I woke to a sound that chilled me. Scratching. Long, slow scratches coming from inside the closet itself. I sat frozen, staring at the door, the sound growing louder, closer. Finally, I built the courage to fling the door open. The closet was empty, but on the inside wall, new words had been etched overnight, fresh and sharp. Tomorrow. I didn't tell my parents. They wouldn't have believed me anyway. But all day, I couldn't shake the sense that the house was watching me. The windows reflected more than just light. They reflected shadows that didn't belong to anyone inside. And every step I took, the floorboard seemed to echo a second set of footsteps, always just behind me. September 9th arrived, and with it, a heaviness in the air that I can't explain. Even the sunlight felt dimmer that morning, casting long, unnatural shadows across the floor. My parents went about their day as though nothing was wrong, but I couldn't stop staring at the clock. Each tick felt louder, pulling me toward midnight. When night finally fell, the house grew unbearably still. I tried to sleep, but just as the clock struck 12, the scratching began again. This time it wasn't from the closet. It came from beneath the floorboards. I pressed my ear against the wooden planks and froze. There was whispering, faint but clear, repeating one word over and over. Down. Then came the sound of chains rattling from the basement. My door creaked open on its own, as though inviting me. I wanted to scream, to run, but something stronger pulled me. Against every instinct, I found myself walking toward the staircase, flashlight trembling in my hand. The basement was colder than ever, my breath visible in the beam of my flashlight. The chains on the small door were gone. They hadn't been cut, they had simply fallen away, lying in a twisted pile on the floor. The wooden door now stood slightly ajar, and from the crack seeped a smell so foul it made me gag. I should have run, but instead I pushed the door open. Beyond was a narrow tunnel carved into the earth, the walls damp and crumbling. As I stepped inside, the whispers grew louder, echoing from deep within the passage. They weren't in English anymore, just a low, guttural chant that made my skin crawl. I don't know how far I walked before I saw it. A small room carved out of the dirt, lit by dozens of melted candles. On the far wall was a symbol, burned deep into the stone, surrounded by dark stains that looked too much like blood. And in the center of the room, half buried in the soil, was a box. As I bent down, I saw my name carved into its lid. I didn't open the box. I couldn't. The moment I touched it, the candle snuffed out, and I was plunged into total darkness. Something moved behind me, slow footsteps dragging along the dirt floor. I ran, dropping my flashlight, scraping my hands against the tunnel walls until I burst back into the basement. When I turned, the small wooden door slammed shut on its own. The chains slithered back into place like snakes, sealing it once more. I collapsed on the floor, sobbing, while above me, I heard my parents call my name as though nothing had happened. The next morning, my mom announced we were leaving. She wouldn't explain why, only that she had a bad feeling. We packed everything and left Ashwood Street behind that very day. We never spoke of it again, but I'll never forget the warning carved into my closet. Don't stay past September 9th. We hadn't, and maybe that's the only reason I'm still alive to tell this story. Even now, every September 9th, I wake up at midnight without fail, and every year I hear the same faint scratching, this time not from beneath the floorboards, but from somewhere closer, as though Ashwood Street followed me, as though the box is still waiting to be opened. If you had found that box with your name carved into it, would you have opened it? Let me know in the comment below.